Yeah, yeah.
Ma'am. Video. There we go. Bella County Board of Commissioners to order. Stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, a roll call, please.
Commissioner Jalazinski, Commissioner Engler, Commissioner Marino, Commissioner Swaney, Commissioner Hutchinson, Commissioner Embry, Commissioner Hope. All present, Mr. Chairman.
Clerk, up next should be approval of the agenda. We'll start with general public comments, and then we'll have a presentation from Emergency Management Director Mark Griffiths. We have no appointments to boards or commissions. This is down to committee reports. Finance and Administration Committee.
Finance Administration Committee is all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
The Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committees all set, Mr. Chairman.
You and Human Resources and Public Works Committee.
Human Resources and Public, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We have no intergovernmental affairs, no administrative controller issues. Under unfinished business, we have a contract between Isabella County and Mid-Michigan Water. We have nothing under new business, and we'll have general public comment again at the end of the session, and then announcements and then adjournment. So with that, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So move, Marino.
Support. Been moved and supported. All those in favor say aye. Very good. And that brings us to general public comment. For anyone for general public comment, we try to limit people to 3 minutes. Oh. Get it.
Good evening. Again, my name is Scott Clark, Detective Sergeant with the Sheriff's Office and the President of the Command Officer Association. I would like to thank the board for listening to us last meeting and placing the discussion for the public safety millage on tonight's agenda. I would like to explain to the board the reasoning we were pushing so hard for the millage to be placed on the August ballot last meeting. It was our understanding at the time that if we were placed on the November ballot, that we would be laid off for over a year. We have since learned that if it is on the November ballot and it passes, the board has the ability to make sure the funds can be obtained sooner and the long layoff can be avoided. We understand how important passing of the renewal of the current operating millage is in August. We would like the board to know that if they choose to put the public safety millage on the November ballot rather than the August ballot, we will do everything in our power to help spread the word to the citizens of this county. However, if you choose to place it on the November ballot, we ask you to not lay us off at the end of September and find a way to keep us on until the vote. If we are laid off for a couple months, then you will be doing to the citizens what you are trying to avoid. That is not providing police services to them and placing them in danger. We ask you to place the public safety millage on the ballot, and we will work hard to get it passed and keep the citizens of Isabella County safe.
Thank you.
like this is kind of a waste of time, like if it was back there. So my name is Bree Mogenberg. I know you're all aware of who I am. One thing that I want to start off by saying quickly is that trust and accountability is extremely important to everything that we do. If all of you here are not aware, I just got done leading up and heading to remove the chair of the Michigan Republican Party. I did not do that by lying to people. I did not do that by not holding myself accountable. I had to do both of those things. And what's happened with everybody in this room, good, bad, or indifferent, Republican or Democrat, I don't care. Accountability and trust has been lost. And it started when the jail went through and there wasn't a vote to put it through appropriately. You have seen what happened with the voting at the last millage. You did not only not get it, you lost it by a landslide. Now, hiring a firm to come in and using the taxpayer money to try to do what you were not capable of doing is only going to upset the voter more. We need to listen to what our police department is saying. You need to listen to what the voters are saying. I have had people in this room that have yelled at voters because we did not pass it. We listened to the county commissioner. We read the letter that came forward. That is unacceptable. This is not the fault of the voters that this did not pass. If the commissioners in this room want to see millages pass, you get your boots on, you get to the voters, you have a town hall, you have a Zoom where it's not just me talking to you and bouncing off the walls. There are all these people back here that have something to say and there's no communication. I'll set up a town hall. Give me your favorite Democrat. I'll sit down with the favorite Democrat and we'll figure out how to make this happen. You get the community behind you, you get the trust, and you start making it for everything that's faltered in this room. And you come together and we have to pull this through for the community. You all know how to reach me. If you do not, please call me because I'm ready to help. The last thing we need is to see our sheriff's department lose the funding that they need. In case you want it, you can grab a pen. I'll give you my number. It's public information, so I'm okay giving it to you right now. 989-309-9118. It's time to make this better. You guys have to take the step and it starts with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone online, Michelle? Anyone online would like to speak? This is the time you would press *9 if you're on the phone, or raise your hand if you're on the Zoom. Anyone else from the audience that would like to speak? Yeah.
When municipalities are facing a financial crisis, whether it be mismanagement or miscommunication or a combination of factors, often the state intervenes to take varying degrees of direct control over certain aspects of our local government. Right now, the state is a potential threat to Isabella County's local autonomy. I believe that we know what is best for our county. We do not need the state to exert any control over any aspect of this community. Once the state steps in, it will take a lot of effort to regain that control. What happened here has already happened, and we need to come together and focus on the future of Isabella County. Everyone here should be nodding their heads yes, we wish to keep control, which brings me to the reason I have been attending and speaking up since the beginning of the year. This Board of Commissioners and a few others here know the purpose of the messages that I have been giving. For those of you who have not heard, the state has stripped away authority from townships and counties of their zoning ordinances and places state standards for wind and solar projects in favor of energy developers. While that may not be the subject of this discussion today, it is a subject where state tries to take control. Here in Isabella County, the wind projects are already here, but utility scale solar projects are being implemented and leases have been signed. Each individual township and county currently has their own ordinances, but now the state can come in and dictate and approve solar fields
superseding the wishes of our local communities with little to no protections for the non-participating residents. If you are not in favor of state control, we need to unite and overcome the financial crisis of this county and support the efforts of citizens across Michigan who have been circulating petitions and collecting signatures for statewide ballot campaign to restore local zoning choices. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for general public comment? Being no one else, we'll move along. Emergency management budget presentation by Mark Griffiths, Director, Isabella County 911 and Emergency Management.
Good evening, Commissioners. Be presenting the proposed implications to the Isabella County Emergency Management Budget. Tim Cavertis is with me to begin the beginning part. Unfortunately, as all things happen, the original person who was coming, which is Orville Thieker, had a family emergency, and we've had to go to our backup plan for that on top of other things that have happened today. So it is just part of the process of keeping things going. So when I get the slides up here, I will share the screen. So hopefully the public and yourselves can see it up on the big screen. Correctly, so stand by. That's good. Okay, so with that, Lieutenant Tim Cavertis from the Michigan State Police Emergency Management Homeland Security Division is with me to talk about the beginning parts of emergency.
Great, thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Again, Lieutenant Tim Cavertis with the State Police Emergency Management Homeland Security Division. I'm a district coordinator, which all that is I provide program oversight for our local emergency management programs within the state. A couple things I'd like to talk about to kind of set the stage for Director Griffith's presentation is I believe you have some information on emergency management from the state level and Public Act 390, the Emergency Management Act. So I'm going to take a couple minutes and just go through the high points of the act. So Public Act 390 of 1976 is our Michigan Emergency Management Act. And that sets the framework from our governor down to our local elected officials, as well as our emergency managers that are appointed into these positions throughout the state. The framework provides guidance, if you will, and at the local level, the County Board of Commissioners of each county shall appoint an emergency management coordinator. In the absence of an appointed person, the emergency manager coordinator shall be the chairperson of the County Board of Commissioners. So each county, all 83 in the state of Michigan, have an emergency management program. And then we have some municipalities within the state based on their population that have emergency management programs as well. So as we go through Public Act 390, we have some administrative rules that we cover. And that is our legal process of how to declare a state of emergency locally, how to request a state declaration for assistance if you need additional resources or economic response, if you will, as disasters are becoming more and more expensive as we go through time. Part of those administrative rules is a process, and that's why it's so important for our local emergency managers to understand, to be educated, and to be trained on as we work through Public Act 390. Within those administrative rules, we also have an educational piece to it, and that is our professional emergency management designation for our local emergency managers, or quite frankly, anybody within our communities who would like to have that designation and learn more about the emergency management system. That's a number of courses online as well as in person that they have to complete, and then they take a test, and if they pass, they can probably wear that designation. Within that process, yearly, they have to update their education. So it's a continuing educational process, if you will, to advance not only the professionalism of emergency management in the state of Michigan, but also to share best practices, right? To look at what our federal partners are doing, our regional partners, our local partners are doing within the world of emergency management as we respond to a number of incidents and disasters. If I move on to a couple of grants, the first grant is the Emergency Management Performance Grant, which you are currently under at this point in time. This grant provides federal funding for the emergency management program. That funding, once you accept it, then you have to make sure or benchmark certain rules and regulations within that. Some of those are the administration and finance of the grant. You will, or the program will also discuss laws and authorities of that grant. We will talk about hazard identification, risk assessment, consequence analysis for the county, also hazard mitigation projects. There is a plan within the county, the hazard mitigation plan. That plan, once it's accepted at the state and the federal level, that will open the door to additional funding for mitigation projects. And that's not only for our government entities, but it's also for other businesses, organizations within the community. So without that very large plan that is done and completed by the emergency manager, that is a source of funding that you can utilize. And Director Griffiths will cover that further. Additional prevention matters, right? So we know how to respond to disaster states of emergencies, but what we'd like to focus on is how can we prevent them? How can we put mitigation practices in the process so the disasters aren't as bad that we have to deal with? So prevention is a big piece, and that brings in operational planning. We have a ton of plans for our responders, but also we'd like to have plans for the recovery, right? How quickly can we recover from community impacts based on that disaster that we're dealing with? And then we can finish up with that grant, which brings us to incident management. As we always work with our first responders as the coordinating agency and resource management. And resources at the local level, right, are great. Regionally, we have resources at the state and federal level. So depending on how big the disaster is, that's what comes out of our emergency management office, typically out of that emergency operations center. Once activated, is where these resources are going to come and provide assistance. And then lastly, I want to talk about one more grant. That is the Homeland Security Grant Program, HSGP. This program is additional funding that comes through our federal government, comes down to the state, and is distributed in a regional basis. So each local emergency manager has a seat on that regional board, and they utilize that funding for preventing, protecting, against, mitigating, responding, and recovering from any type of act of terrorism or other hazards. So the management of both of those grants are extremely important in they're time consuming. So all of the information I've provided you, that's typically what our local emergency managers do on blue sky days, right? Monday through Friday, they're working on that planning piece. They're satisfying grants, right? They're working with our local first responders, our private sector, all our community partners to build resiliency within our community against any type of disaster. When a disaster hits, it's all hands on deck. And I have been participating in a number of years of responding to disasters and helping out local emergency management here in the county. So when those occur, there's a response, right? Part of it, life safety is always going to be first and foremost, right? We have great first responders. We need them to respond to take care of us, right? Emergency management is that coordination piece, right? For all those moving parts as we respond, right? So we don't drop the ball and forget somebody that is needed in that response. The other part of that is the recovery process, which is much longer typically than our response. And that recovery process is getting our community back to normalcy, if you will, just like prior to that incident. And that takes time. And that's also put on the local emergency management program. That's long-term, short-term recovery groups working, certainly getting with government to make sure they're back up to speed to respond after a disaster, but also our community partners. We cannot forget all of our citizens, all our community partners, our private organizations, our volunteer organizations that are within our county borders here that can come and partake in that recovery process. So a lot of moving parts that emergency management coordinates. And I appreciate the time that you gave me to explain that and dive into it. Again, you have documentation and some reading material in front of you. Please go through that. If you have any questions, certainly I'll stick around to try and answer those. Other than that, I'll turn it over to Director Griffiths. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant. I'll try to keep this brief, Commissioners. So again, Lieutenant, thank you for coming over and taking that, and hopefully I can get to the, okay, next screen. So again, who are our partners? We have our citizens, we have our police, fire, EMS, state, local, and federal, our event organizers, our K through 12 and higher education, hospitals, public health, even the local medical offices I had a chance to meet during our COVID experience. Businesses, nonprofits, local, state and federal government. So it is a lot of people that we work with to try and network to make the safety and the response and the recovery happen in our community. The planning efforts, I can't stress enough. It's one of these things that we do in the office on the blue sky days, like the Lieutenant said. What you see here in the red document is the hazard mitigation plan. I'll talk about that later. In the white document, you see all the binder clips. Each one of those binder clips ends up in its own binder, and each one of the people that are responsible for direction and control and the other 13 annexes, our fire, our police, our EMS, our hospitals, they put all of what they have to do in an emergency to work with us to make the community safer to respond. And unfortunately, we've had to use it a few times in the county, and fortunately, it's been an excellent experience working with all these partners. The red binder book that I talked about, the hazard mitigation plan, we have to do that every 5 years. And it is a strenuous process. It takes a lot of people, I would venture to say over hundreds of hours of review, and it has to be approved by FEMA, and then it has come before you every 5 years to get it approved. And because you have approved it, there's places like Central Michigan University that did a post-hazard mitigation grant, and they received over $1 million for it. And because after the flood, the Drain Commission put in for a grant for the, I can't even say the four-letter acronym, but for this one four-letter federal company, they came and cleaned all our ditches and stuff for a tune of about $700,000 that came in. So we've had over $1.9 million. I'll go back later to show it here. That has come in because that plan is maintained through all of the hours of the emergency management position there. That's for full time. We do planning and exercises, and part of the grant requirements, which you have also seen, you have the document, that's that work agreement that we pass well before we know what the money is. You've seen it every year since 2002. Requires that we do 3 different exercises at least. In the pictures say 1,000 words. You have down in Shepherd, we did a school shooter exercise. What a great thing that their schools and law enforcement and all our county law enforcement and state all provided in. We did another exercise where we lit a jet on fire. It was very expensive, but we had firefighters from the entire community come that day and learn how, if we have an airplane crash of a large jet, how to fight that fire. And then later on in the bottom picture, that is the weapons of 51st Civil Support Team, CBRN, chemical, biological, nuclear, explosive team, working with our local hazmat team, or if we have to handle some type of terrorism event that was practiced during an exercise. K through 12 planning, we do the active shooter, lockdown, fire drill, tornado shelter, in place drill as they need them. We've helped them develop their original plans, which I'm very proud to say our schools have done a great job of taking an original 147-page template and reducing it down. They've also done a great job of taking care of the school grants. Those grants all had to be reviewed by this position. The position had to sign off on it to go forward to get us extra homeland security. All these drills and stuff, we also coordinate and have to notify up. Through some generous grants that this position has brought in, the Rave Panic button for a 3-year experiment that we're testing in our schools right now. So if we have an active shooter, a fire, or EMS thing, teachers, staff can use this thing to activate 911 to check in with each other. And in the very first beginning of my career, I'm very proud to say I did get a grant for about $175,000, and we put an actual emergency police style mobile radio on top of a power supply in every single school. So they would have a backup to call 911 because it's important to have multiple ways to get it. And that is a direct link that we have. And that is throughout all schools in Isabella County. We've maintained that since that grant came in. In our colleges and universities, we've had incidents over the years. I can't remember half of them. I was trying to put this together, but the health department has been a part of them. One time when we had a bunch of people who were for summer camp that got something. They came, they helped. The university did an amazing job working with us. Going forward into our future, June 25th, we are planning an active shooter exercise. We are inviting law enforcement and fire from outside of our community to follow under the leadership of our law enforcement and fire in this community to prepare for something that's a bad school type incident shooting or something like that. So again, just the whole entire community and the response when the first responders are getting to those large scale incidents. Fairgrounds planning, we've done a lot with them. We've worked on their emergency plans. You know, again, it always seems when the fair is going on, the weather sometimes turns dark overhead. They've done some amazing job in safety planning with us for animal incidents. Their staff actually went through incident command training that we took them through a long time ago. And the program has worked with them to find some equipment that we were downsizing and actually give them equipment to have communications during the fair, which has helped out many times just for events and lost children's and medical things. We're currently also working like we do with many organizations that if we can find a grant that helps that organization get money to be better prepared, we try to help them fill that grant out, go find and seek that grant. We've also helped local event planning and training. We've done Maple Syrup Festival, also providing our CERT teams and volunteers from our community. We've helped out with CMU graduation. We helped out when we were doing the Latour bicycle race. We've helped out in Tribal Family Olympics. We've helped out when we've had the special train visits that have come into our community that also bring great activity, great income for our community, but also have to have a safety plan to make sure the event can happen safely. Educational and institutional responses that emergency management has been in over the years. We've had an active shooter one. We've had a bus accident, unfortunately, that had a fatality in it. We've been part of the school reunifications when we evacuated schools and went over to other places. That has also developed into learning quickly to try and help reroute buses so they don't go past horrible traffic accident scenes and see things they really shouldn't. We've had the power outages and graduation. We've provided communications to that as support through the office. And the government response, you know, we were talking about planning and we had to activate the continuity of operations and the continuity of government when we had to evacuate the county building for the asbestos incident. And we did that without interruption. I don't think the public even knew, but we, within under 4 hours, had a cell phone for each department head. So if their phone dialed in from the public, they instantly got it. We still were communicating via email. And then we went and we did our COOP plan. As all great plans, great, they're written down, they do. The COOP plan literally was to take over where every single person is sitting in this room and run county government. And at that time, we had other things going in here that we knew we couldn't impact. So the emergency management program flexed and we found, working with the administration, a place to go because we couldn't participate in that. And we did that. It's extensive. We've done some training. The department heads of every department have tried to make it so the public would not even notice the interruption. So that was an important part of our responses, and it took hundreds of hours. 2014, the funny picture, I'd hope it would show up better on the screen, but this is our Mount Pleasant Fire Department, quite honestly, standing in knee-high water in the middle of the parking lot at the hospital. We were sitting there pumping out water so we could keep the ER open because I learned it's very expensive when the water gets into the hospital and causes a shutdown. To the right of it on this flood, this is down in the city parks. That was the damage caused by the flooding. It was over $200,000 estimated in damage. I got that back from our local newspaper on the web. I was still trying to get some hard numbers of how much money we got back in the end for that stuff. But again, emergency management was there. It's got to be a larger scale disaster where it requires coordination. And basically the way I tell people is when police, fire, EMS, and schools need help, that's when they call us and we try to get them the help that they need and the people that they need. In 2017, we had a massive flood. It was presidentially declared. And in that one, as the lieutenant talked about damage assessment, we had to have a team of people. And that was our police, fire, and some volunteers that went out and looked at the damage, wrote it up on the sheets, gave it back to the state, and then the state came in and boots on the ground. Literally, lieutenant was here with me walking through, and later on with FEMA walking through. That was estimated in a paper article of over $90 million. That was a huge disaster. I don't think anybody forgets that. The amount of infrastructure that was wiped out. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the money we got back from that one as we come through. Dam failures. While I've been at the helm here, I know we've had 3 dam failures. We've lost 3 different dams. They have gone back and rebuilt these dams and these ponds. But recently you just had somebody come on and tell us about all of our dams and the liability issues that we're going to have. And that's going to start a whole nother emergency plans in coordination with drain commissioner and the public, especially when a dam fails. We need to try to be able to contact those public that are downstream from the water to have that as it happens. Active violence. I don't know all of the things. You would have to talk to our police officers, but I know we've been involved in a fatal stabbing. A man killed a teen with a machete, 2 shot in a Union Township apartment. We had a CMU shooting event that had an active shooter type response. We had over 100 police people come, let alone all the other fire and off-duty people that came to respond and help us that day. Fire response, I could remember that when I first started, downtown Mount Pleasant was on fire. And then downtown Shepherd was on fire. And again, when these large events, emergency management helps coordinate with the 911 partner, with the police and fire to get the emergency messages out as we go. We've had chemical incidents. I was trying to remember them over the years, but our hazmat team has done an amazing job. They're made up of many individuals from many of our departments within our county and a couple that border us to help make us protected. Recently, we had a plume come out from a release of over 2,000 gallons of hydrochloric acid, and we're very thankful. The wind didn't blow that anywhere near the people, and we're thankful the hazmat team was able to quickly contain what we were doing. But if you remember back in 2004, we had an oil spill that happened. We've also had in 2004 a tanker that flipped over that was in a Mount Pleasant neighborhood. We had to open that up and pump that stuff out. So these disasters happen again. If you can remember COVID-19 response, the emergency manager was considered an essential employee working throughout the pandemic. And as we served in the statewide central warehouse, which many people didn't know, and that wasn't supposed to be that way, we offered to be a housing part for our stockpile for the middle of Michigan. We had over 300 pallets in our stockpile servicing all those local offices, all our first responders, all our hospitals that we had, and then all of our neighbors' needs. We coordinated all of that with the emergency operations program at that point. We executed and helped plan the safety of multiple vaccination clinics with the health department, with the university. You saw them everywhere. We know what it is. It is a very large logistical lift to coordinate everything to make those safe. And I talked about the supply delivery. I did put this down here on the bottom where it says it was not done by using 5 and 24 hours. Because at that time, and I understand I'm FLS exempt, and that means that you'll go beyond 40 hours sometime. COVID was definitely beyond 40 hours. And I run the 911 department, and I really don't want to bring that part up because we're focusing on what just the emergency management department is. But at that time, we were budgeted for 5 hours in emergency management. We had a grant called the Homeland Security Grant that you heard of. You're going to hear about it 2 more times tonight. And that grant, as part of its prioritization for things that we got for first responders in our community, also included a Homeland Security plan. And I'm going to give Julie Adams, a person who's been with us for over 10 years, kudos, because she is the one that helped us track 300 pallets for several months where we did this and got this out to our public things. And that's just things we just did not step up to take any type of credit for. In our search and rescue and response, we've had numerous calls out where we've tried to help out when police or fire call or coordinate elderly children, vulnerable people that we've had. We've had autistic children that have gone. We've worked with the Isabella County Sheriff's Department, most recently in 24 on that. And way back in 2012, unfortunately on the tribe, we were looking for a young child. We found the child was not alive, but it was a huge search. We brought in over 300 people from the Department of Corrections that came on and helped us search, and we searched water, we searched trees, we had dogs. It was a huge effort to coordinate through this office and with a few volunteers. So here's the money stuff, so you should know about it. So we have the Homeland Security Grant, we have the EMPG grant that you heard, we have the HMGP grant, we have the HMEP grant. We got a PSIC grant at one time. Section 19 funding is part of the funding that the state does have available that we were able to leverage and get back directly to the townships in the 2017 flood, maximizing the $10,000 each that they could take back. And then I talked to you about that 4-letter grant, the NRCS, that I forgot what it stands for. And then I talked to you about the post grants for the hazard mitigation, because that plan was intact. That we got the 2 grants right now, and that water is very important at Central. That slows down the water flow from the city of Mount Pleasant that comes, just natural way geography is, all the way down to the ponds out towards Tennyson and then going further south as that happens. We talk about the tribal grants, and some of the data is not there since 2002 in my home, but what I could count for is approximately $830,000 worth of tribal grants. This position has sought as a need in our community to go out and get things and done it. And most recently, you've seen me up here for our automatic external defibrillators, the AEDs. The person who was in that position applied for that, and they got us over $200,000 to put that out and make our community safer. You'll also see that the tribe has generously funded several of our outdoor sirens, along with stuff with our panic buttons for schools, our hazmat prime mover, some other stuff. There's too many that I can't even remember right now, but I know it's more than 830,000. So let's talk about one of the fun things I joked with the sheriff, but it's not a joke right now. It's time for you to actually see what one piece of paperwork. This is not the grant. This is a piece of paperwork that the sheriff get a piece of equipment for the sheriff's department on their dive team, their rescue services. And the first sentence says, the public reporting burden for this data collection is estimated to an average of 8 hours per response. I can tell you the sheriff and I spent well over 8 hours trying to take pictures of his boat out of water in storage, where it would be in the water and how they would use it in this piece of equipment to help save lives. And this is not the grant agreement or the time. This is one thing we had to do for one piece of equipment that we have purchased over the years. So let's talk about the impacts to wrap it up. Again, I want to make very clear, you commissioners have been very great to come forward and say, this is the beginning of the budget talk for emergency management. This is the beginning, it's not the final. When we had our first talk, I appreciate the committee that came together and said, we are proposing a 90.1% cut to your department. Go ahead and come and talk to us. It's very tough to go 2 by 2 because of our restrictions. So this is the platform. So I know many of you are hearing it for the first time. Many of you have seen our emergency operations center. But in the emergency management budget at this time, you need to understand our outdoor warning sirens are in that. And that includes the seasonal maintenance. That's 2 checks, spring and fall. And it includes a monthly silent testing. Because quite honestly, we tried to find 29 volunteers that would stand at the bottom of the siren when I turned it on every month and then call me and report back. And we never got consistency in that. So we do actually pay. We are electronically doing it. We do have some problems. You can see some of our infrastructure. And I encourage all of our township friends that are here every time, and all of our police and fire people who live out in the county, that the second the siren doesn't go off, to give me a call. And I'm very pleased to say that we've educated the public since 2002 to kind of expect it at 3 o'clock on the first Thursday. And they call us when stuff doesn't work. And we are doing our best to fix that. I also want to talk about our community notification. People know that used to be code red. Now we call it rave. This is the mass notification outbound emails and phones. This is not a one that 911 funds. This is where stuff can get murky. But this is a part of it that could affect our mass notification that lets us call people, text people, and do our warning systems. There are lots of parts of it where the public can sign up for free on Smart 911, and the part where they dial into 911, that part comes in. But there are many people in our community who have signed up to get everything from our weather alerts to our calls from when our law enforcement says, barricade yourself or avoid this area. They contact 911 and emergency management at different times, and we help get those messages out. Other impacts currently in that budget for emergency management is our school emergency radio tower lease. So that one would have to be looked at as it goes through. We will come and talk to you again. I don't want to talk about numbers with you now because we're in the process of negotiating, as you have said, about what it would actually look like for emergency management. But understand that all those radios that you have helped put, that the tribe has helped put, that we use as when the phones are cut or something in a school, that system, we pay for a tower lease that keeps the connectivity. And then the other concern that I have, and this one is probably one of the most confusing things about these grants as we go forward, is the fact that if we don't have emergency management program or a person designated, these grants require most times for us to either front the money and get reimbursed a percentage. So the emergency management program manager, that one we're getting paid back about 30%, and that grant is going down. But that person working 40 hours a week is the one that applies for all these things, that turns around and maintains all these plans, all these books, and applies for a certain grant. And one of the grants that they got is our Homeland Security grant. That grant currently this year, I just was before you, I'll be back tonight. Last year's grant was about $23,000. And you have to adjust our budget up to show the expenditure of 23,000 more dollars when it comes to that. But what is important to remember is we get reimbursed 100% of it, right? But that is something in budgeting. It's not my lane. I trust the people, but you've already experienced a huge discussion on this when we looked at the sheriff's department budget for the $4.8 million tower that we're getting and how that shows and when we're getting paid back. Those are huge things about how the money works in these grants. So in most of the grants that I deal with, we try to have the money to pay for it and then get reimbursed 100% in this particular lane on HSGP. In some of the grants, we have to do a 25% match. That's the one that provided the $1.1 million match that we did a 50 grand grant on. But on other grants, if they allow me to ask for a cash advance, so we do not have to use any of taxpayer money to front the money because the project's large enough, I've done that in the past and I fully take every advantage I can to save us, our taxpayers, this money. These grants also provide for our training, our equipment and stuff like that. Basically, you know, if you cut anything 90% a program in it, you're going to decrease stuff. You know that we're a preparedness program. You know that we help coordinate stuff. You know that our ability to go get grants, if you cut it by 90% of going out and looking and trying to get it, it's going to have an eligibility thing. We're not going to be able to fill the grants and get them. You know, that delays in responses to emergency and disaster just simply because there's not hours budgeted in the program to support what it is. It doesn't mean that we won't have them. And the reduce of community resilience. We will not be able to get out as much and teach as much to the community about things, put things up on our Facebook, put things up, sharing stuff like that. Our Facebook's run through 911 if anybody tries to check that about run, hide, fight and signs of terrorism. It's just a fact if you cut something over 90%. So the thing that also is a concern, and that was brought up in the one presentation by the other person about the dams, is right, our county liability will and compromise our safety and well-being. I don't want this to be a scare thing. I want to make sure the public understands. I'm not saying this is a scare thing. If this program is responsible for trying to reduce liability, educate people on safety, and you cut it 90%, you're just going to get less of it. That's what I'm saying. Eliminating emergency management may appear to save the money on the EMPG grant. It is my professional belief that if we cut that grant that does fund a portion of the emergency management program manager, our options of getting that back will be extremely limited. I have watched a few programs quit taking that grant and they are not getting that grant back. It does say the opportunity is there, but I'm telling you from my professional end, I don't think that part happens. So in summary, we talk about if we're a statute, which we've kind of covered, or public act, we talk about the value. So now I'm trying to tell you about return on investment. So from the 2002, with the numbers I've been able to generate, with the grants and money we've been able to do, what I can tell you is it looks like for every single taxpayer dollar you put into this program, you got $4.14 back to the community. You did not get a penny in return. If your mission as part of commissioners being to protect the community and everything else, I think that's an important statement we need to brag about and say, you put $1 into the program, we got $4 back, actually $4.14. I think that's extremely important to make sure everybody knows that you spent that money very wisely. That's the end of my program on this screen. I'm not sure that's on that one, but that's all I have for you at this time. I wanted to just cover and make sure you understood. The public act states we have to have it. The return on investment is over $4 for each one. And we're heavily invested in supporting both the public and the community in the large responses, trying to get people back as much as we can. Thank you for the time to do the presentation tonight. If you have any questions about the paperwork, let me know.
Thank you, gentlemen. Yes, sir.
Just a question, maybe this is. Mr. Griffith's or from the lieutenant, maybe you can answer. I know some of the discussions we've had about the Homeland Security grants and how they keep trending down. Do you see that as a continued trend, or do you see any changes in that? I know the amounts, like I said, every year they seem to be going down and down. Do you think that some of them will be eventually phased out completely, or where do you see that going? And maybe you can't answer this, but or maybe Mark, I know we've had the discussion.
He's not our regional lieutenant and
Okay.
the other one's here, but he knows about it.
I figured.
If you want to answer, but I'd like to
I've been
take a
trying to
stab at it.
Find out.
So I
Yeah.
can tell you in my career, yes, they're going down. I've seen an event happen, September 11th. And then all of a sudden, these grants came in, there was a lot of money and we took a lot of advantage of getting our first responder things and they've expired. And I will tell you that our trending is downward. I think our finance person, we've talked about that. It's downward. I don't know if it'll be zero. I know there's more cuts that they plan on coming. At this point, I would only tell you that while the money's on the table and we can get it, some of the money is 100% reimbursed. We have everything we can for Isabella County and its first responders while we can. You want to say anything else?
No, absolutely. I can only speak historically, and you are correct. These federal grants are getting less and less and less. And I think that's more imperative to have a experienced emergency management program. They're gonna have to get a little more creative to find additional grants to make up that funding. But that funding is being reduced at the federal level.
Director Griffith, elaborate on the positions that potentially could be cut within emergency management.
Okay,
Just
so the way we're
clarification.
currently structured is I am the director of 911 and emergency management. I am 5 hours a week on emergency management supervising the program, and that is general fund money, no grant money. We have a full-time emergency manager. We've been, like to think a majority of the time, we've had a full-time emergency manager since I've been here, and before that, the person before me. That position, it's 40 hours a week. The grants have trended down, but overall in my historic analysis, at this point, the money's been about 30%. I think we came to you just recently talking about $17,000 coming in for the EMPG grant to make a match, and then the county has to pull it, less than having to pay for a full-time person. That position applied for and got through the Homeland Security Grant Program, which is one of these grants that you're talking about, sir, Commissioner Engler. And in that grant program, just recently, I can't tell you overall because we've gotten hundreds of thousands of dollars of stuff, but recently, you remember the school shooting down south in Texas and the police officers had problems breaking in. And we're using that grant locally to try and buy breaching tools for the cops. There's some equipment, but that even our community, which our community group that meets, police, fire, EMS, road commission, hospital stuff, prioritize putting a 24-hour-a-week part-time planner into that grant. And they focus on the schools and the grant paperwork. And they've helped out immensely for over 11 years. I think is a 10-year. That's what I was shouting out there. And so because of that position, that half-time person, if you look at it as FTE versus other, that person's position is 100% reimbursed. But you do have to front the money. So it shows that way in the budget. So it looks like we're getting large. So you have one lane of the emergency management program position, the emergency management coordinator. You've got a grant that makes it less than full-time equivalent for cost. Because that person goes out and finds grants. We got a part-time person, 24 hours. So when you look at it overall, you're estimating 64 plus 40 hours plus my 5 hours of helping the community per week plan for disasters and looking, right? And as everybody, not if, it's a win, that's one's coming. So, so that's kind of, that answers your question, sir. I just wanted to kind of put it that way.
Thank you both, Lieutenant Kavardis and Director Griffiths. Thank you very much for the education and history lesson. I think it's important that the board understands how important these positions are. As we, in this day and age, I believe it's absolutely imperative
that we are prepared. And the potential risk of situations coming up grows every day. So these emergency management positions, I feel are a linchpin to ensure the best possible outcome for the residents of Isabella County. I am in full support of maintaining these positions within our 2025 fiscal budget. So again, you have my support in this effort. So thank you both.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. And that brings us to committee reports, Finance and Administration Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our first item is consider ratifying and placing on file the March 29th, 2024 invoice list in the amount of $1,757,874.63. The April 5th, 2024 invoice list in the amount of $2,470,580. $2,470,581.01. The 1 cent through me. And the adjustment list dated April 11th, 2024. So as I bring these forward, I always try to repeat that many eyes that look at all the payments that the county makes from various services and other obligations that we have. And so they do come to department heads, elected officials. Then the next step is they go through administrative review. They come to emails to all the county board commissioners in their homes, their county emails. Then it comes to committee, finance administration. Finally, it comes here for another review. And then tonight during the regular meeting, we make the approvals of bills that don't have any pressing questions. I can tell you by the time we get through all these reviews, if there's something at issue, somebody cites it and gets corrected before it even comes to our meetings tonight. But looking at the March 29th list, it's a quite a large amount. However, if you take a look at the bills, and we get quite a document on each invoice list. The ones that are exceeding $5,000, we get listed on the front page. And then we have access to all the other smaller bills that are being paid or recommended for payment. But of that $1,757,000 and some additional change, $1,204,000 is going to graduate intermediate schools, which is a tax disbursement. And there are some other sizable tax disbursements going to other intermediate school districts and community colleges. These are taxes collected by the county and then paid out to the taxing institutions that benefit from the taxes. Other than that, as I look at the list, I see there's like a 33,744. That's for Commission on Aging Pavilion project. It's the pavilion right outside the door that it's currently being worked on to bring it to completion. But all these bills that I look at here are ones that are very customary because we've paid them so many times in the past, either contractual work. In fact, integrated architecture, we have 3 payments for October, November, and December, and that's architectural services related to the construction of the correctional facility sheriff's office. Other than that, there are contracts that we quite regularly pay. We have a medical examiner and so on and so forth. I didn't know if any commissioner had questions on any of the larger bills or any of the bills that are in the inside of the report.
I might make a comment just because I've been getting a lot of emails and questions about budgets. People understanding where payments go and where that money comes from and how it's designated for that project. So for example, the Commission on Aging Pavilion, the Commission on Aging has their own millage. So it has its own direct funding that's stated by the voters for that, for them to maintain this facility and build that pavilion. So that money cannot be used for any other department.
So even though they do have their own millage, the county board does set the millage that's going to be assessed to the taxpayers on an annual basis, and any expenditures such as the pavilion does come before the county board for contractual approval, excuse me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hearing no other questions, we'll move on then to the April 5th list. This one's a little bit more, almost $2.5 million. Looking at that, the biggest ticket item on that is payment to Clark Construction Company of almost 1.8 million, and that's the February construction charges for the correctional facility. We have payment to Quality Environmental Services of 187,856, and that is a payment for the continuing asbestos abatement going on in the administration building. Next largest one, we have four. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there's even some on the inside of lesser amount, but payment to WWRP Client Trust. And these payments, looks like there's almost $8,000, 51,000, about 13, closing on 56,000. These are payments for back to the client trust, or they appealed their property taxes or property taxes to the state tribunal on various arguments. And once the tribunal acts on the request, approves it, comes back notification to the treasurer, and then these are then taxes repaid. We've been having to take care of some of these tax tribunal things on a regular basis. A lot of different arguments for reduction of commercial and industrial taxes, but it's just part of the process that we go through. I don't see anything other questions I have on the larger bills or anything on the inside. Anybody else? Commissioner Engler?
I know from the previous one, we had a child care, one that always kind of gives me a little bit of, and that was the Jackson. Not in this one, I think a couple of months ago, we had one in Midland, so it continues to be a problem where we have to send the juveniles out of the county to do this, so it's a good thing that we're not seeing them 2 months in a row, but we're sending them all over the state, so hopefully we can get that figured out. Either get the facility here or do something there, but I know that one item can get really out of hand really fast.
So our trial court, our judges and staff do a tremendous job. It's just something we don't have any control over. We need to pay the bills. If there's a child that needs protection or special services, the judge rules on that, and we get sent the bill. We have to pay it. We do get some funds from the state of Michigan for the child care fund, but this is one of the most volatile areas of our budget. But the court's been doing a wonderful job keeping those court costs down. Unfortunately, there's a lack of service providers, and I think sometimes when the costs are down, it's because we don't have options to provide the services that a child needs. But be the best.
Always, yeah.
Any other comments, questions on the April 5th?
Just want to point out, you mentioned the WWRP Client Trust tax tribunal lowered value amount. This is a point of clarification. It's over $120,000 in just 1 month that's lost in revenue. This has been an ongoing thing because we've had numerous individuals and corporations come before the tax tribunal and lower their taxable values, and we continue to lose revenue month after month because of that.
We need to point out too, these aren't just impacts on the county budget, but these are reductions to school districts, townships, anybody that gets a property tax being reduced. Takes a hit on everybody's budget. Moving on to the adjustment list. Now, the adjustment list is one that modifies the invoice list that we've already been kind of reviewed. But there are changes to the list. There might be additions, there might be deletions, there might be increases. But they're changes and they're changes for good purposes. And on this, you take a look at a lot of these, you'll see that there's a early payment to avoid a late fee. You know, it's always the county has its own schedule on how it pays its bills, but the vendor has its own schedule when it wants to be paid those bills. So it's kind of a way to keep up by making these adjustments. So we pay early to get a late fee taken away or not have it given to us, or to be able to benefit from a reduced get an early payment discount. That's the word I'm looking for. So those are, as I look at this, that's pretty much what they are this time. Every once in a while, you'll see where somebody inadvertently puts in a sales tax and that it's put in on it gets corrected. Or there's an input data error when the bill gets put in, but all of these are early payments to avoid a late fee or get a payment discount. Any questions on the adjustment list? Then we'll move those for approval consideration at tonight's meeting.
Item 2 for the Finance and Administration Committee is to consider approving the 2024 Equalization Report on the STC Form L-4024 as presented by the Equalization Department and required by the state statute, and authorize the chairperson of the Board of Commissioners and the county clerk to sign the same, and direct it to be filed with the county clerk's office and with the state tax commissioner in a timely manner. We have before us Sir Pete Preston. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Is it all right if I turn this over to you?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Pardon me. So as we've discussed before, we have this entire equalization process where our department finishes an overall county study in all the property classes, commercial, residential, agricultural, and industrial. We do that study up to December 1st, to turn it over to the assessors, and then by December 31st, set those either increases or decreases as to what the assessors should look to be doing at March Board of Review, so that we meet a ratio between 49 and 50%. Once we establish that on December 31st, the assessors move forward to go ahead and send out their assessment notices, and then go through the March Board of Review and hear protest and appeals of their property tax through that assessment notice. Once that is all done, we get the whole bundle back in our department, and then we prepare all that data for you folks, which is culminated in the 4024 form, which is a report of the assessed values in Isabella County, as signed by the chair, the clerk, and the county's equalization director. Following that, there's also a form, I can talk forms all day, but 4037, which is for each local unit to have a signed document that the board agrees with their values. There was no factoring, which means if they didn't come between 49 and 50, that you would factor them and bring them to that, but that did not happen. They have good assessors here in the county. And so we've got to that point where we are reporting, we're asking you to approve the 4024 so we can send that off to the state, so the state of Michigan can do their final equalization in May. And I do have some, basic numbers of that. Overall, the county saw a 7.9% increase in assessed value, which is half of market. And you saw a taxable value increase of 4.72%. It would have been higher, but of course you have the larger tax bases, the wind turbine, depreciating on the more rapid scale than the normal market would be. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
And Director Preston, the increase will be for the summer tax assessment, is that correct?
That will be for the summer and winter tax levy for the county the summer, and then for your other millages in the winter for tax.
Good.
starting next summer.
But starting, yeah, and for the summer levy will be for the July tax.
Commissioners, any other questions?
I was at a township game last night, and I know we've had this discussion about the townships picking up of the pretty possible assessments going on. I know you've always done them without charging, but I don't know if there needs to be a little further explanation on that when we're going out or not, but they had a lot of questions on why that changed and yeah, kind of go into that, so I have to answer when I go there. I know we talked about it. You were doing
There's
a lot of service to the county at that time.
a lot of services done by the Equalization Department for local units without charge, essentially reimbursement. Most counties, when they provide tax billing and assessment notices for the local units, it's by contract, and it's usually on a per parcel basis. There's nothing in stone at this time that I've said, no, we're not doing this, or we're doing this. I am responding to one of the treasurers with a list of questions of how this transition would work if it were to happen. I've already been in contact with BSNA, which is the software provider for 90% of the local units in the state of Michigan. I have a contract with them that all I have to do is ink, and they will provide a bay of services to the local units in order to train them into actually doing it themselves. So there's a line. I am planning on responding to that email. I just needed to wrap up other things. When I've spoken with two treasurers, they raised some very valid questions. The biggest concern, not just question, biggest concern is putting the local units in a bind for the summer tax levy. That is not our intent, especially since the primary receiver of those revenues would be the county in the summer levy. So no, it's an in-process thing. It would be a change, but in no way do we anticipate to just abandon these folks without at least, giving training. And for us to stop those services, I don't necessarily think that's an administrative decision I would want to make as a department head. I'd want to share that burden with you folks in administration.
Some of the rumors are already a little out there. I just wanted to get ahead of it a little bit because I know there has been no decision made at this time, but there's already talk out there that thinks it's going to happen, and so I just want to make sure.
Exciting thing to me though is that BSNA, everything costs money, and it's not that much for them to do a virtual where every treasurer, every assessor, everybody can come into this room. It's not per person. And be able to do a virtual training on there. They would all have their databases in front of them hooked into Wi-Fi. They'd be able to see everything they would see if they were setting up their home office doing that. So again, there's no intention to do that. I need to respond, but I'm getting different level of ability to provide that service at the local unit. We do not want to miss out on leaving somebody or for the local unit to get charged an excessive amount for someone else.
Thank you.
Other questions from the commission? Director Preston, thank you again for the clarification. Again, for the county treasurers and for the township treasurers and their independent government, I want to make sure they understand that we're going to do our due diligence. We're not going to just drop this in their lap and say, here you go. We want to make sure that we are setting them up for success. Well, I appreciate your help in that. Appreciate the clarification. Hearing no other questions, we'll move this item to our regular board meeting tonight. Thank you, Director Preston.
Thank you, and I will keep you folks up to date on anything that will be sending to the local units as explanation with some of their questions. That way you have the same information. Thank you.
Our next item is consider approving the prime contract change order number 17 with Clark Construction in a net additional amount of $316,809 and authorize the board chairperson to sign the same. Do we have Heidi? We do. Heidi is manager from Clark Construction. You know the title better than I do.
Senior Project Manager. Is that correct?
Yes.
So
Welcome.
you. Good evening, everybody.
17th change order. We've had 16 before. Sometimes change orders come in with a reduction of costs, and sometimes they come in with an increase in costs, and sometimes they have a little bit of both. But if you would please, Heidi, take over the explanation for change order number 17.
Sure. Change order number 17 is the total of $316,809. Right now, we have not taken anything from our contingency, but we are still taking from buyout to cover these costs. We have a remaining buyout of $189,640, and our contingency is still $781,774. So the total is $971,414. Kind of going through the items on the list here on the change order. The first item here is PCO number 40. This was regarding CCD 11, which we had several changes in here, and that's the bulk of the cost. When we were doing some overview of the lighting control for the project, we had to make some changes. And with that, we had to work with our electrician and also our security contractor to make sure that we were making sure that the booking area and also the pod area were covered by the security contractor, and vice versa with the common areas with the electrician. There was also some changes in there for the master distribution panel. When we started doing some arc flash study reviews, we had to make some changes in there, so that it increased the cost as well. So the cost for Master Electric, which was our electrician, is $221,706. And for our security contractor, Poly Jail, that was an add of $14,721. We did have to add some additional outlets on the roof at the makeup air units and the rooftop units for convenience outlets. Our roofer had to add some cost in there to flash those in, which was $380,000. I'm sorry, $3,800. My bad. For a total there of this one was $240,697. Moving down to PCO 49. Here we had William E. Walter, which is our plumber. His total cost was $16,277. That included adding some mop hydrants that the Michigan Department of Corrections wanted. That was on second floor. So when they were doing cleaning, the inmates could then use that water versus having to carry buckets up the stairs. We also had to some shower drains that we had to add the drains. They were not shown on the drawings. And then we had to rework the ductwork in the commissary storage. It interfered with electrical equipment. We also had some revising of light fixtures to surface mount versus recessed in security areas, so that way we didn't have any issues with inmates. And we had some pole breakers that we had to change for the generators. That cost for electrician was $30,703, and that total of that PCO was $53,962. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed on there the caulking. So because we had to have some surface mounted fixtures, we do have to add security caulk. That security caulk is so that inmates can't hide any contraband or anything in there. So because the security fixtures were surface mount, we had to make sure we had caulk around those. And that was a total of $6,982. Moving down to PCO 104. This was for we had cost savings here from our masonry contractor. We did not take the masonry walls all the way to the deck. We were able to stop 3 rows short because that was not a security wall. This was in area A, which is the office area. So that was a savings of $985 from Strauss. The next one, PCO number 108, Strauss Masonry, we had a credit from them. At the overhead doors on both the west and east side, where the actual cover for the overhead door is, there was a lintel there. We were asked to infill that lintel in with masonry. Because that cover covered that lintel, we had a savings of not putting that block in of $1,640. The next item is PCO 109. There was no power shown on the drawings for the irrigation box. So for the electrician to wire that up was an add of $1,668. PCO 113, we had to add some hot water recirculating lines in the laundry room and kitchen. That was to meet code. So for our plumber to do that work was a cost of $3,908. The next item is 114. We had high-speed doors. We didn't have any electrical shown for those on the drawings. So that was an add of $6,586. Next item is PCO 118. This one was for the public conference room. We had one wall where there's masonry shown. The rest of the walls were drywall. To make that consecutive all the way around, we added drywall to cover those masonry walls with furring that out. For our drywall contractor to do that work was $2,778. Any questions? Oh, I thought someone said something. Okay. And then the last one on the list here is PCO 121. The pods, when they came in, they were not set up to have night lighting in there. For the requirements of the MDOC, we do need to have night lighting in those pods. For the electrician to rewire those, it was an add of $9,835. So the total of this cost change was $316,809. And again, that's all coming from our buyout line still. We have not touched contingency.
Thank you. I know that Commissioner Embry, myself, our county administrator, the sheriff, we meet every other week with the owner, architect, contractors meeting. And I think Commissioner Embry and I had quite a reaction when we looked at the price tag of the change order. But it was explained that this was already factored into the buyout because we thought we were really starting to fit into our contingency, but it is not. We also have a volunteer person that was very much involved with the construction of this building and has an interest in serving the county, and that's Mike Ferber. Did I get the last name right?
Mhm.
He attends with us too. And so he was able to come out, kind of put our fears aside that, you know, these things are, you never know what changes are going to come up. This is a very technical building. And there's changes that, to ebb and flow the project. But he thought his opinion was that Clark Construction is doing a very good job, and he didn't see anything that would be of concern to him in terms of the cost. There was further discussion, and we're closing on 70%, maybe greater than that. And most of the big ticket items have been covered. And so as we close in on the completion, I think we're financially in good shape because we're still with monies in our buyout of 200,000, over 200,000, and we still have almost 800,000 in contingency funding. So there are no guarantees, but it looks like we're on track to get this building completed in budget or perhaps under budget. And we thank Clark Construction. It does an excellent job of representing the interests of the counties and managing this project. So it goes on. I'm just amazed every time I walk through that building and look at all the different trades and people doing different work at different times that are dependent upon other trades. And it's Clark Construction. They have to do an excellent job of keeping everybody coordinated and moving forward. Commissioner Embry.
Heidi, I do have a couple questions for you. Where do we stand completion wise?
We're about 67% complete at this time.
And are we looking at finishing sometime the end of November with the construction part of it? Before we get into testing?
Testing will be starting roughly in September. We're going to start doing our startups and commissioning. We also have about 3 months worth of testing to do with our security contractor. And that's testing all the doors, security fixture, like plumbing fixtures, lighting, all the cameras. So it's a pretty intensive testing that we do, and then making sure that all the plumbing fixtures will shut off just by a switch in the detention areas. Making sure the cameras are all in the right position and are tying back into the computer system. So there's a lot to do and a lot of testing of the door hardware and making sure all that is working properly and stuff like that. With in the door hardware, what I mean is like the detention door hardware. This is like you mentioned, it's a very technical building. There's a lot of security in here and a lot of different items to go through. So and make sure that when we turn it over on December 19th, that it's a fully functioning operating building that the sheriff can then take over, and when he's ready to move in, that it's all set.
So you're saying that you'll be finished with construction at the end of August? Is your plan?
Our plan is it might be run into a little bit of September, but we can start testing areas earlier, like the end of August, beginning of September. We're hoping to have our detention contractor, Poly Jail, which is their sub is Accurate Controls, to start at the end of August. So there's different areas where they can come in, like in the office area, which will be completed a little sooner. They can start testing, the cameras and stuff like that, because that area is not as technical. They can get that out of the way. So.
There's one other thing. I know I'm out there for regular owner operator meetings, but I'm also out there for the subcontractor meetings. And I know I'm in a bug in your ear constantly. But I do want to point out that I appreciate the effort you have put forth on behalf of Isabella County to keep the cost of this project in line. I know you go out of your way, you work very hard, so I do want to acknowledge that. Thank you, man.
I thank you.
Yes, thank you, Heidi. And Sheriff, I don't know if you're planning an open house when the building is done. I think it's very important that the residents of the county can take a look at a facility that's going to be something that's going to serve many, many, many years in the future. And I know that you've offered tours of the current facility. And I can tell you right now, it's a difference between night and day, eliminates a lot of liability for the county. It eliminates a lot of maintenance headaches that we've been having, and there's more, but hopefully you'll have this open house at some point so people can actually see what they're getting. Any other questions? And we'll move this change order number 17 to the regular meeting tonight.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.
We have item 4 is a discussion regarding potential road patrol millage ballot language. Chairman, would you like to turn this over to you?
I would greatly appreciate that.
That's
Commissioner.
it.
All right. And I am going to cut right to the chase on this and try to boil it down as succinctly as I can. But we absolutely have to provide an acceptable level of law enforcement services to this county. And then we have to find a way to fund it. Been busy talking to a lot of folks in the community. And through those discussions, I am hopeful that we can do that. We identified about $2 million in cuts. Everything else, we're still working on those. And when we finalize those, we'll walk the public through those. Still trying to work through all that. We need to do 2 things. One, we need to commit to putting a law enforcement operation millage that will fund positions only and nothing else on the November ballot. Calling it road patrol millage, I'm not sure if that works because there's some question about whether that covers detectives, special deputies, school resources officers, and things like that. I think a more inclusive term would be law enforcement operations. I don't think we can specify an amount right now. We're still trying to hash that out. I can say that it will be much lower than the 2.5 we asked for in February. And then number 2, we need to assure our sheriff department employees that we will budget, keep them through this calendar year And that cost is not yet in the 24-25 budget. It needs to be. We need to keep our renewals, I think, on the August ballot, like they always are. Operational millage, the parks, the I-Ride, which we're gonna talk about here shortly. We've always done those in August. I think we need to keep them there. I think we need a special millage in November to fund law enforcement positions. And so I'm hoping that tonight, so we do formal motions at the regular session. And I'm hoping that a motion will come forward to fund current law enforcement operations positions through the 2024 calendar year, contingent upon passage of the county operating millage in August 2024, and to place on the November 5th, 2024 ballot a dedicated millage to support law enforcement operations positions beyond calendar year 2024. I'm hopeful that that motion will come forward tonight and that we will pass it. Any comments, questions? Yes, sir.
Questions, what our thoughts are on, the, I guess, the process in the current format of the budget for 2025, they would lose senior prosecutor attorney. I know that we have applied for 2% tribal funding for that position. Are there any thoughts about broadening the millage to support that position? Because if we ask for that money in tribal funding, that basically just moves their funding from something else in the township or counties to that position on a permanent basis if we kind of lean on them to that.
Couple thoughts on that.
Okay, thank you.
One, we do a special millage in November. We have to keep it as simple and succinct as possible. Two, in my mind, prosecuting attorney is law enforcement. You have to be able to prosecute people. We've got deputies out there picking people up and detectives working in crimes. We got to have somebody to prosecute, or else the whole thing's kind of pointless. Whether that needs to be funded with this millage is something I'm not sure we have worked out. I know that it's something we want to fund. So I apologize, it's a little ambiguous. It's a huge, it's huge on our radar. To get that office has been understaffed for years. Need to do something about that. My thoughts on that. Yes, sir.
The other thing, and getting a lot of questions on. What was the we don't.
Yeah. So I didn't hear the last part of that.
So that we're not dipping into this into the general.
To specify exactly what positions it will pay for. And I think it needs to specify that it will pay for positions. Yep.
And no money will come into the general fund. It will be strictly for positions within the sheriff's department.
I think so.
Probably one of the other things we need to discuss is there going to be like on that part. Oh, I'm sorry. Probably, you know, most villages have a length on there. We haven't discussed how long this should go on, or should it be, parts of 4 years, or it should be. So those are some of the discussions we have to get in, and I know we're doing the long-term budget planning, and so that all have to be part of that, so. I know after 6 years, and hopefully from our projections will, so maybe that would have to factor in how we set that up.
That would definitely be a factor in my mind. Yeah. I mean, there are details that'll need to be worked out. But I think tonight, my hope is that we commit to putting something on the November ballot, and that we commit to keeping our sheriff's department folks on payroll through this calendar year. So. Any other comments, questions? Okay, thank you.
Hearing none other, then we'll move that discussion. We need to move that discussion tonight, or we?
We can amend the agenda tonight before we approve it, I think.
All right, so we'll move that item to our regular board meeting. A little bit here. Thank you.
The next is consider adopting resolution 2024-06 to approve the ballot language for the Isabella County Parks tax rate request on the August 6, 2024 primary election ballot.
Welcome.
Good evening. So 12 years ago, in August of 2012, the voters of Isabella County first approved a dedicated Parks Fund millage. That approval set in motion what has been an era of financial stability for the Isabella County Park System. It's fostered development within the parks, and it's also allowed for proactive rather than reactive park management. Over the past 12 years, the citizens of Isabella County have invested in the park system. And while the return on investment from a park system is harder to quantify, I can confidently say that the community has seen a return on that investment. The system currently includes 8 parks, 20 miles of trails, which are both natural surface and paved trails, 2 modern campgrounds that have 171 campsites and 10 rental cabins between them, a rustic campground with 10 sites at Deerfield Nature Park, multiple beaches, multiple watercraft launch sites, rental pavilions, disc golf courses, a land navigation course, cross-country ski trails, and green open space. In summary, the Isabella County Park System is a vibrant resource for outdoor recreation, tourism, our local economy, and our local ecosystem. That being said, it's not hard to imagine why past voters would support a millage proposal to fund parks in our home community. So, like I said, the millage was initially proposed in 2012 for a 6-year term to levy up to 0.35 mils. That passed in August of 2012 with 55% of voters saying yes. It passed again in 2018, another 6-year term up to 0.35 mils. It passed by 5% of voters saying yes in 2018. All but 3 precincts in Isabella County passed that in 2018, and the 3 precincts that didn't were in the same district. So only 1 district in the last election did not support the renewal of that millage. Those statistics, coupled with the fact that our reservation system, hold on, let me find this number. According to our reservation system, Isabella County Parks hosted over 49,000 visitors last year, and that's just based on transactions in our reservation and point of sale system. A lot of park systems will use what's called a vehicle multiplier, where they times each entrance into the park by 3.5 because every car has multiple people in it. Every campground reservation has multiple people using that. So that 49,000 is not even including that multiplier that could be applied. So the numbers of support for our Isabella County Park System, I think, speak to the fact, I think it's clear and convincing evidence that our community wants this park system, uses this park system, supports this park system. So why August? I guess let me speak to that because that's the decision that's actually being brought to the board tonight. This is brought to the Parks Commission for consideration in August because historically this has been on the ballot in August. When I started last July, the conversation had always been there will be a renewal next August for this millage. Approval in August does many things for our department. First of all, it allows, excuse me, for us to have a result prior to the budget approval, which happens in September. So we can go into fiscal year 25 knowing if the voters want to continue to fund this proposal or not. Also, if we go in August, we have that second opportunity to potentially be on a ballot in November as a renewal if the August vote doesn't go in our favor. If we wait until November, we've kind of lost that second opportunity. And I've done a lot of research and statistically, it is beneficial for us to be a renewal versus coming to the voters as a new proposal. When we're talking about a renewal, voters in the county are already familiar and they already know the impact of what this funding does. They're not looking at it as an increased cost. So the perception is different. This is a cost that they're familiar with. They've paid this tax over the last 12 years. We're asking for a renewal. It's not an increase. And so it's a different perception. Like I said, we've already seen community support for this funding for this program. Also, there's a voter expectation of a service. So over the last 12 years, we've been able to provide a service at a certain level. And renewing this kind of maintains that service. And it gives the voters what they expect out of their local park system. So the other benefit about bringing this to the voters in August is that although we do have services available year round, you can go into Deerfield Park any time of the year. You can do cross-country skiing. You can access that park any season. You can go ice fishing at some of our parks during the winter as well. August is a time where all of our infrastructure is open, all of our parks are open, all of our services are kind of running at their maximum. And so if the voters want to interact with our park system, if they want to have a question answered, August is a great time. We have our seasonal staff in August. We have our full-time staff kind of really just in the trenches in August. And again, all of our parks are open. So if voters have questions or if they want to get out and see what this funding is supporting, that's a great time of year for them to have that access. You know, I think bringing this to the voters at what kind of is just the historically expected time honors their past support of this and it puts them in the driver's seat. Do they want this or not? I know the situation that the county is in as a whole. And our department is very aware of that, respectful of that. As we're working on our budget for fiscal year 25, we're being conservative. We're looking at creative solutions for our revenue stream. We're looking at how are we managing our operation? Are we sustainable? Are there things that need to change? Are there things that are working? You know, in the grand scheme of things, if you look at our revenue, this millage funding is 53% of our revenue if you look at the actuals from the 2023 budget. So this is a critical portion of our operation. And while we do have revenues from our parks, they don't cover the entire department. And so these are all things that we're looking at and that, you know, we're trying to be consistent with the times economically. We're trying to provide these services to the community without having to, you know, we want to keep our fees competitive as far as our campgrounds and our entrance fees. And this renewal will allow us to continue to do that. So I have a lot more information. I could continue. I know it's already been a long meeting. So I don't want to just go on and on and on, but I do think it's important to take this to the voters and to take it to them on the August ballot. And I'm happy to answer any further questions.
I'm just gonna make a comment. I was a Parks and Recreation Director for this county for 13 years and probably the last one that didn't have the ability for a millage. And I know financially it was a struggle. The challenges of providing a safe and equitable park system was a challenge. We don't, in this county, we don't have any state parks. We have a wonderful city park system and townships have their parks. But it's Isabella County that has those large natural areas that allow people to get out, get refreshed. And you take a look at the river. We've got Deerfield Nature Park, we've got Meridian. Just Meridian County, no, it's not Meridian County Park. I know I was part of it, renaming it. Is it Meridian County Park? But we have river access sites. Think about the thousands of people that access the river through the county park system and then float down to the city. I'm very supportive. I think this is an absolute necessary millage to keep the parks. We no longer have the ability to bring it in under the general fund. And so people want the parks to have the ability to escape and refresh themselves. This is an important millage.
Oh, Madam Director,
Please.
could you speak to how our Parks and Recreation system is viewed by the other Parks and Recreation systems around the state? We've spoken to it briefly at some of our meetings on how we are essentially almost a model for a lot of other park systems.
Yes, so first of all, our park fees are really extremely competitive if you look at municipal campground fees throughout the region. Also the regular kind of equipment replacement and maintenance schedules that we have are admirable and sort of a model for other park systems in the region. And that's been largely due to the fact that our maintenance staff has had that kind of forward thinking of replacing equipment when possible, keeping regular maintenance schedules. Our just the diversity of amenities that we offer, for example, in Deerfield Nature Park, having the disc golf courses, we get people who are coming down from Cadillac. We have most recently, one of the U.S. Marine Corps recruiting groups was using Deerfield to do some training for boot camp. So we're seeing a diversity of groups coming in to use our resources because they're not available in communities surrounding us. And you know, I go to meetings with regional groups of park managers, and there's always positive feedback about what we're doing here in the county. And to be honest, there's usually surprise at where our fees are set in compared to the services that we're able to provide. And again, that's only possible because we have this funding from the community. One other thing I pulled out, I was kind of doing just a cursory search in my research, and I was able to just within minutes find a list of 50 other municipalities in Michigan who are using millage funding to manage their parks and recreation systems. And that I could have gone further, but I felt like, well, 50 is a pretty good number. So just to say that this is a pretty standard and well-supported funding structure, not just in our county, but throughout the state of Michigan. And I also, one other thing I wanted to point out, which is a little bit of a sidebar, but when you look at our ballot language that was drafted by county legal counsel, you will see that there's a blank for the estimate for what this would bring in the first year. And that's because we were waiting on the equalization report that was brought to you tonight. So we do have ballot language that was approved by legal counsel. We just need to fill in that number if it's approved by the Board of Commissioners, now that we have the equalization report.
Commissioner Engler?
Yeah, I know at our parks meeting, we had quite a long conversation about this and it's not that I don't support this. I do, my main concern. And I was at a meeting last night. I said, well, I got 22 hours before I have to make up my mind on how I'm going to vote on this. So I think I still have some time yet. But anyways, I think I am going to support this for the August ballot. My main concern and still the main concern is that there was such a, the vote on the village, last one was a 74% no vote on that, and there was such a, I could say it now, a misinformation campaign with 38 percenters. And there was 6,000 vote on there, and so we actually have to overcome this misinformation where everybody's taxes was gonna increase 38%, and it was not. It's technically percentage on there, but what the public perceived on that was incorrect, as a total. So, I think some of the discussions we had, that the people that support the parks will get out and probably support our millage, the 6.61. That includes 1% for the township, and the 2.8, I think, is for the school millage. So, my main concern is getting that one passed first, because if that one doesn't pass, then we're in the whole world hurt, and we have to start over and figure out how we're gonna do everything. So I probably made my mind up about 15 minutes ago, but I will support this for the August.
Any other questions?
I was also at that Parks and Rec. Biggest thing with this one is, this is not a new tax renewal. This is something we've had. Doesn't make it any easier, and I'm like Frank, we just thought we were putting too much into August. But we do need the 6.1. I would vote for having the this be presented in the August, but we're gonna need, thing in the back of my mind, we're gonna have some town hall meetings. We're gonna need you, and we're gonna need the patrol. We need everybody to help us with it. I mean, we're doing everything we can to make cuts, and cuts not hurt, but we've got to get to where we're self-sufficient. We need to.
And just on that note, my calendar is already filling up. As soon as tomorrow night, depending on what happens at tonight's meeting, I have, scheduled meetings to get out and start talking to the public. And I've got, a calendar that's, I'm attempting to get out to the public as much as I can. One more point I want to make too, because we did, this was unanimously decided on by the Parks Commission to bring as a recommendation. We had lengthy discussion at that meeting. And I think it's important for the public to know that this was supported by our Parks Commission. And I also, in case anyone doesn't know, I think everyone on the Board of Commissioners knows, but in case anyone in the public doesn't know, the Isabella County Parks and Recreation is not part of the general fund, right? We have this millage, we have grants, and we have our park revenue. We do not get any funding from the general fund. And I think we all know that we won't be reabsorbed into the general fund if we don't have the opportunity to go out for renewal. And so, again, I hope that the public perception and the information that gets out to the public is accurate, and I will do my part. And I know I have staff here and members of our Parks Commission tonight to show that we are doing our part, hopefully to get the accurate information out to the community, and that we're in this with our best efforts. And this is critical to us because we are not part of the general fund. And we need the board's support, and we need the community support.
Just a comment, but Director Hanson, since you've come on board, you've done an amazing job as Parks and Recreation Director. We have a beautiful park system, as someone mentioned earlier. I do a little kayaking, and I put in before at Majeski Landing and floated all the way into town. And you go through Deerfield, and then you go through Meridian, and there's some huge, wild, open areas there that are just amazing. Such an asset to this community. So I support this 100%, and I support it going on the August ballot.
Any additional? Hi, Mr. Marino.
I've always supported the parks since I've been on the commission. I'm so glad that TV coverage is here tonight. That is going to help get the word out. I wish that we had uniform coverage here. I think that would have forestalled a lot of the problems and misinformation, but like I said, I would think it's a great program, not just for obvious, but also crime prevention, all kinds of other side. And I'm definitely going to be supporting that tonight.
Any further comments or questions? Then we'll move this item, considering resolution 2024-06 for the county parks tax rate request to this evening's meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hanson. Item 6 for the Finance and Administration Committee is to consider adopting resolution number 2024-07 to approve the ballot language for the county operating renewal on the August 6, 2024 primary election ballot. Mr. Chairman?
Well, it's already been said, this is an essential. We need to have this renewal. There is no county government. I think stress the township government. But there was some discussion earlier. Treasurer Pickens, could you come up to the speaker thing? I guess I had some questions. I know we're citizens serving here. We don't know all the answers. You've been in the job many, many years, so we can always go to you to get some of the answers. But you commented that apparently there has to be a meeting of the committee that doles out these taxes.
Years, we meet every 4 years, and it's the tax allocation board. And it's made up of the county treasurer, finance chair, RASD, superintendent, a choice from the judges and a choice from somebody from the city. And the reasoning for that meeting is to allow the units to deliver budgets and show a need for the tax millage that's available. And I think it's a little premature that you try to pass, because the townships haven't had an opportunity, nor have you, to come to this board, for them to go through it. And usually it says in the statutes, which you're quoting here in your 211, 205K, the county board shall ask for the meeting of the allocation board, and then the allocation board says meets on the third Monday in April to get together. The county clerk is usually the one that compiles the group and lets the supervisors know that they need to pick a representative, and the judges and those that have to pick. And then we meet in their office. And if we have another time, we have to meet, go from there. But I do think, and you can check, that I think passing this resolution until that allocation board meets.
With that, I'm not sure. Are we looking at the third Monday coming up or
Third Monday was yesterday.
yesterday? I was afraid you were going to say that. Is there possible to have a special meeting of the allocation board?
It does say in the statutes here that on some occasions, when the committee meets in 10 days, within 10 days of being brought together. But that's usually done prior to that third Monday in May. So I can't answer that question. That's probably a legal question that you need to ask.
If we need to go through this process to meet the legalities of the State Enabling Act, I'm trying to remember, what is the date that we need to take action on a motion, or we lose our ability to move to the August ballot?
I think those, then you have to ask the clerk on that, but I think there is time limits as well, just like you're looking for the Parks and Rec and the IRide. I mean, they have to be okayed by the board, by a certain date, May something, I believe, in order to get on the August ballot. But again, check with the clerk. That's not my bailiwick.
We have that pending. approval by the.
Just wondering if that's something we can act on this pending allocation board approval. And
Well, you haven't given the townships. I mean, you're saying in this resolution that the township's gonna get 1 mil and the county's gonna get 6.61. And that's not,
and that's what it's been for how many years?
it's been that way for a long time. It has, Jerry, it has, but again, the opportunity to, ask, and I'm not sure that the townships are gonna ask for more. But you guys do what you gotta do, and I guess you go from there, but I just thought it was kind of odd. That's why I brought it up to you earlier about passing a resolution before the allocation board has even had an opportunity to meet.
Okay. At this point, I'm thinking, we may have to go with a contingent upon it and approve it contingent upon the allocation board, and give the townships a chance. We'll have to see if we can do a special meeting of the board, and it may even require that we have to do a special meeting of this commission. Don't have the answers here tonight, but it's something that's important, and somehow that was just an oversight, and hopefully that's not something that's something we can't work around.
Do you have any other comments, questions? Well, my understanding is it's the intent of the board to go ahead and move consideration of adopting resolution number 2024-07 contingent upon approval of the tax allocation board to our regular meeting this evening. Is that correct? All right, and that's what we'll do. All right. Thank you.
Next item is consider approving the ballot language for the renewal of the Isabella County Transportation Commission millage request to be placed on the August 6, 2024 primary election ballot.
Good evening, Commissioners. Public.
Director Collins, how are you?
Doing very well. How are you?
Good, sir.
So as you know, I've submitted a request on behalf of the Transportation Commission to put our renewal language on the August ballot. The renewal will be up to 1 mil if approved by this body. This up to 1 mil language has been in place with us since 2004. We've had an active millage on the August ballot, as far as I can tell, since August of 1978. This year marks our 50th anniversary of providing essential services to the greatest needed community members that we have. Last year, we provided 308,000 trips. That's down a bit since COVID. The world has changed through COVID, and people move different, people eat different, people shop different. Things have changed. So our ridership is down from what it was pre-COVID, but it is coming back at an increasing rate. Of those 308,000 trips that we did last year, about 25% of them at least were people that were either disabled or senior, several of which are well below the poverty line. I think it's important to understand that the people that most need our service wouldn't be able to connect themselves to employment. They won't be able to connect themselves to like medical trips. They won't be able to connect themselves to their social service needs or mental health appointments. All of those types of things are tied directly to their ability to access those via public transit. We need to continue as a community, in my opinion, we need to continue to support our public transit so we can boost our economy and try to change the direction of the poverty rate in this county. As we know, we have one of the highest poverty rates amongst counties in the state. We need to be proactive in changing that. Without the support of local transit, locally, we wouldn't be able to get the state and federal dollars that we then leverage to provide the service to our local community. To give an understanding of how that works, all of us that pay for gas and auto-related sales at Napa Auto Parts or Auto Valley or things like that, those all go into the transportation fund, both federally, they have their own gas tax that they supply for federal transportation funding. And then we have state gas tax that also goes towards transportation funding. We can only leverage those dollars back into this community with the local support. So to give an idea of what that means, in the years of fiscal year 2020, fiscal year through fiscal year 23, our local tax support allowed the Transportation Commission to levy nearly $17 million into this county to provide essential services to those constituents with the highest economic need. And I think it's vital, and I think our Board of Commissioners at the Transportation Commission agree that it is vital to continue to fund public transportation for those individuals. I can well, I'll just field any questions, I guess. I want to save your time. Go ahead and ask any questions you may have, please.
Again, this is a renewal.
Correct.
Again, no need to actually. To me, this is an essential. You're doing a lot of other things.
Yes.
I know those of us have our own vehicles, and my family's fortunate to have two, so my wife can go, or she doesn't want to go with me. But I know I have a neighbor that depends on I ride to get to work, and the vehicle is always across the street. So the people that need the service depend on it. And you're right, it is a economic issue for a lot that can't afford transportation. So I'll be voting to put this on the August thing. Sure.
You know, essential service for those greatest in need, and we have a lot of people who are on the cutting edge of falling through, and this is a safety net for them. So I hope that everyone supports it. I know that you know, we'll look up that 4-leaf. We have an employee whose car went down and used, when he couldn't get rides, used your service to get all the way up to Claire. So that they could continue to make money and pay for those repairs to their car. And if they didn't have that service, they probably, you know, would fall through the cracks. For your service to the community.
Thank you.
Commissioner Embry?
One last thing again, can I go on with Commissioner Hutchinson, is that this is not part of the general fund. This is a standalone enterprise fund that the taxpayers and the voters brought into existence and have paid for since, what do I have here? 2009. Is that correct?
The millage has been in place at up to 1 mil since 2004. 2009 was the last time it was actually levied in full.
That's for 2004. Reading that writing a little better. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Additional comments, questions? Director Collins, thank you. Come before us.
Thank you.
And we'll move this forward to tonight's meeting for approval consideration. And that does conclude the administration of Finance and Administration Committee report, Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, commissioners. And that brings us to the Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
All right, our first item is consider approving fiscal year 2023 Homeland Security Grant Program intergovernmental agreement between the West Michigan Regional Medical Consortium and Isabella County, and authorize the board chair tonight.
Commissioners, I'll be brief. This is a grant you've seen many times before. The medical consortium is our fiduciary. We have to front the money. Will be allocated approximately $21,000 in change. We will continue to purchase things for our public safety, law enforcement, and our planner is the intention of this grant, and then we will be reimbursed 100% for this grant. You've seen this grant many, many times.
Questions? Oh, yeah, excuse me. Sorry to take your thunder.
Preface, okay. Well, we'll bring this forward to tonight's regular session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have consider approving the submission of the fiscal year 25 Michigan Indigent Defense Commission Compliance Plan and Cost Analysis Grant Application and authorize the board chairperson to sign the same using egrams. We have Public Defender Houseman here. This is a grant we entered into in 2019. When we set this up, the initial things, there's going to be 8 standards. When we set it up, we were going to comply with all of them. This next grant, we have to do 7 and 8, but last year there's 6 and 7. Last year they jumped up and we had to do 8 before we did 6 and 7. So the cost for our share is $240,306, and that's just a small portion of the total grant. By the state, we're required to do all of them if we apply for the grant or not. So we're required to do all the standards even if we don't apply for the grant. But and what's the total amount of the grant? I didn't put that one down.
Oh, I know I submitted probably about 80% completed grant through email yesterday. I worked pretty diligently on it today. It's actually a smaller request than we had last year. So including the amount of the request is actually $1,704,521.03 when you add in the local share of $240,306.09. It comes out to $1,944,827.12. So it's smaller than it was last year. Hard to believe that this is the 5th year I've been here presenting this grant. But overall, the dollar amount has gone down a little bit. Some things last year that aren't included. Last year we replaced all of our computers on the 5-year plan with the county, so that's not included this year. So it's just some things have gone down, some things have gone up. I think in the document I circulated yesterday, I included an increased request from the state for investigator money. I did that as a contingency in case we did lose road patrol. Looking into the future, that might have caused other agencies to be overworked, understaffed. That might impact my department. Most people would think, oh, public defender has less cases because less cases will get filed in court. But my fear with that there will be additional investigative assistance needed on my end to protect people's rights. If you have overworked officers, understaffed officers, that's something that could have impacted the public defender's office more than people think. So I did include that additional request in our grant as a contingency should that happen. Standards 6 and 7. I didn't include any increased request for those standards. I don't foresee, number one, we won't know if that impacts us for probably a year. That's caseload standards and qualifications of attorneys. At this point, I don't believe that there will be any additional funding needs to comply with those 2 standards based on our case filings in Isabella County and the number of attorneys that we have both in the office and on the contract at the present time. I don't foresee that we would need any additional funding to comply.
Some of the discussions we had, is even though we're finally up to 8 standards and completed, that the next step will be the juvenile portion, which is not covered in the current Public Defenders Act. So,
and they're working on coming up with standards for juvenile delinquency. My understanding is that's the one juvenile delinquency bill that was not signed into law back in December. It's coming. We don't know when, but within the next couple of years, yes, juvenile delinquency will fall under the umbrella of MIDC. In the past few months, we've had this discussion about kind of branching off the public defender's office away from the county and having us restructure as a nonprofit. I met with our regional director, Matt Lozen from MIDC, and kind of talked about that. And it was, when we talk about doing that, number one, I'm going out and shopping for benefits plans for that office. Finding that defined contribution plan, all those things that the county does take care of for us right now. And it just can't get all those things together by next Monday at midnight. It's just not going to happen. And I've diligently tried, believe me, but it's not going to happen. And so I asked our regional director, I said, what's the better plan? Do I, go forward, submit our plan, continuing as a county department with the idea that we can change mid-year? That's fine with MIDC. Do I submit nothing? And we continue to work towards that. And he presented the third option was submit what I have about the switch, and we'll worry about it later. And so we met last week in Criminal Justice Committee, and the option that was presented, or submit the plan continuing as a county department and continue to work towards that, was the one that caused me to lose the least amount of sleep. I don't like submitting something that's half finished or submitting nothing at all. And so, making that switch, I don't know what the change in the dollar amount will be. But I don't foresee a big one. But according to MIDC, we're fine with doing that mid-grant here. So at least we have a plan in place. Don't have to figure all that stuff out and get quotes from accountants, which is kind of hard to do this time of year, to make that switch. So, I think it's best to submit it as a county department, and then we continue to work towards that goal. The standard date, obviously one of the changes, I circulated the grant manual a few weeks ago, is the hourly rates for contract attorneys increasing. Again, our surrounding counties are all rounding that change up to the nearest dollar. So they are going up. It's not a lot. Actually, that line item for contractual services in the most recent grant actually goes down from what it was. And that's just taking a better look at our case filings in the trial court, and getting a better read on it 5 years into it.
And some of the discussions that are going into the nonprofit is we're still going to have basically contract with the MIDC through the county, but it will allow the public defender's office to go for more federal grants and maybe to share some of the workload of other counties if we go into a multi-county agreement. So the opportunities
To see happen is some of these counties, potentially smaller counties, kind of band together and do regional public defender offices. I think that's the next step.
but our requirements are going to be pretty similar.
The local share remains the same.
Remain the same, so overseas will pretty much be similar, so.
Here again is based on the average of the 5 years, what the county spent on indigent defense services prior to the creation of MIDC. So that number is set.
Questions?
Comment?
Yes.
I just think that given that there's going to be an election today, that will change the balance of power in Lansing. That after today, we might be seeing some more action on some of these issues like the juvenile thing and all that stuff, or court funding for that matter. But as lots of people know, there's kind of a paralysis right now in Lansing because of the balance of the parties, but that's going to change after tonight.
Okay, any more questions for the public defender? No more, we will move that forward to tonight's regular session, and Mr. Chairman, that completes the work of the Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
Commissioners, thank you, Mr. Hausman.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next up is Human Resources and Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our first item is consider approving the memorandum of agreement between the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, Behavioral and Physical Health and Aging Services Administration and the Isabella County Commission on Aging for the 2024 Senior Project Fresh, and authorize the board chairman to sign the same. We have our Director of Commission on Aging, Jennifer Crawford, here to explain this. Hi.
Hello there. So the MOA before you tonight, if signed, will allow the Commission on Aging to once again participate in Senior Project Fresh. It's a program we've been a part of since 2009, and it's an amazing program. What this does is it allows us to provide coupon booklets to older adults in our community that allows them to spend those dollars at the local farmers markets, which helps not only them get fresh produce, but also helps our local farmers as well. So it's a great program for the community. It does not cost our organization anything. So we're hopeful that you'll allow us to take part in this again.
Yeah, this has been an ongoing program. I remember when my mother used to use that and so many other seniors. It's such a great program.
It is. It's great. We do partner with MSU Extension. In order to get the coupon booklets, they do have to sit through an educational session or workshop that helps teach them about healthy eating as well. So it is really a great program.
Okay, any questions or comments on this? Seeing, hearing none, that concludes the work of the Human Resources and Public Works Committee.
Thank you, gentlemen. That would bring us down to unfinished business. And we have one item. Item A is consider approving the contract dated April 11th, 2024 between Isabella County and Michigan Water for operation, maintenance, treatment, and distribution for the Lake Isabella water supply in order to meet state requirements pending legal approval, and authorize the board chair to sign the same. Our administrator controller was unable to be here this evening, and I know that she could speak to this item very well. Wondering if there's any commissioners that could speak to this arrangement. I don't see our drain commissioner. It's also not present.
Chairman,
Yes.
I am here. I'm sorry
Oh.
that I wasn't able to be in attendance in the room, but I was able to hop on the Zoom. So I can speak to what you have before you. I think in your packet, you also had the minutes from I believe it was the December 19th, 2023 meeting, where you already approved this contract pending legal, but through working through legal counsel with the two parties, we did come up with one other clause that had to be added, and that was a $75 fee for what's called a cross connection inspection. So any public water system has to have I think it's once every 3 years, has to have the connections checked between the residents, if you will, and the water supply to make sure that there's no opportunity for any backflow from the residents into the public water supply. So we didn't think about that at the time the contract was first written. Mid-Michigan Water saw that it wasn't in there, and the drain office is not taking on those duties. That's something that you want more of that certified water operator to perform those duties. And so that was written into the contract. But I wanted the board to see the contract again, because if it was some language change or legal terms that changed, that might be something that you would have already approved. But I felt like because there was a dollar amount added for an additional service, that it should come back to the board for approval again.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any questions?
Any questions, Administrator Frost? I don't see any questions, Administrator Frost, but thank you for jumping on there.
Very much.
You're welcome. And we will move that item to tonight's agenda. We don't have any new business. Brings us down to general public comments. Anyone for general public comment?
and that from a lot of people that I represent. I hope the rest of the commissioners tonight do the right thing and do exactly as you suggested, getting this on the November ballot and keeping us through the end of the year. I think that's the smartest thing we could do for the citizens of Isabella County. Again, thank you, and I hope every commissioner is behind you. Secondly, we will, if this gets on that ballot, myself, along with a big group that we're putting together, will get this out to the public. We will squash rumors. We will make sure they understand what they're voting for, who they're voting for, and not other, where the money's going, not other things. Away from this, I just want to remind commissioners that right now the millage from last December is still fresh in people's minds. And I believe it's your duty to put out information about the renewal in August, that it's a renewal. So people are not confused that they're thinking they're voting for the same thing they just voted for. Because I know, and all my fellow employees, their employer, employees with me, we know what happens if that doesn't pass. The November ballot won't even matter because that is our operating funds for this county. So I suggest that you guys do something, whatever you can in your power, to make sure that every voter in this county understands that is a renewal of what they're already paying for and nothing new. Again, thank you, and we will work with you as a united front to get these things passed.
Sergeant Clark, thank you.
Good evening. I first want to start out by saying that I'm very disappointed to hear that we have a 90% cut that could come to the emergency management system. And the 19 road patrol positions that we're looking at. Why is the first thing that we look at cutting is going to hurt the community in Isabella County? It's going to hinder response times and the community safety. I don't understand why those two are the most important and the biggest cuts here. You guys allowed an open checkbook to the last administrator, and here we are. These two departments are the ones that are being for that. You as commissioners have a duty to be checking those things. I've seen people out there saying, well, she wasn't given the right information. Well, that's your duty as a commissioner to be looking at that. And Mr. Hope, I appreciate you coming forward and taking accountability. None of the other commissioners have. That's poor. You've stepped up and you've talked to people in the community, and I appreciate that as well. But the damage is done here. Transparency needs to be on your radar. It needs to be top priority for you guys. Because yes, the community is remembering what happened in November. But you need to find a way to make sure emergency management and the sheriff's office is not affected by this, as well as your community. You need to be held responsible. You need to take cuts. Why is it the safety that comes first? I was also aware of, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you guys made a very reckless approval of an air conditioning unit for the courthouse. There's research on that. That's a lot of money. And if a millage passes, how can the community be guaranteed that you're not going to be reckless with that money? So if a millage passes, the wording needs to be very strict that you can't use it on something else. Because again, the residents of Isabella County, as well as these officers and emergency management, are going to be the ones that are out. It's not okay. You guys have a job to do. And you need to get it done. I appreciate some of your attitudes have changed tonight, but the damage has been done a long time ago, you guys. Again, Mr. Hope, I do like to acknowledge that you have stepped up. And I appreciate that. I hope you continue to do so, and the other commissioners follow suit.
Thank you.
My name is Carol Ellis. I have lived in Mount Pleasant for 21 years, but members of my family have lived here for 54. And please excuse me, I'm not used to public speaking like this. I am deeply concerned about your decision to eliminate public safety for this county. Many good reasons why you should not eliminate public safety has been brought before you in past weeks. But I don't think anyone has considered the consequences, specifically the costs for the county government going forward with the withdrawal of this existing service. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, commissioners. I appreciate you guys letting me talk. Mike Rogers, I've spoken a few times before, so I'm sure you guys know who I am. So I want to build off what Miss Sawyer said. She's said a lot that, you know, was on my mind. So, but I would like to go down through here and, you know, the public has a very bad image of what's going on right now. And more that you throw at them, the less they're gonna do. And I look at some of these millages that you're gonna all throw out on August. And then you also want to pass the public safety on that same time. Are these guys gonna look at this and say, hey, no, we're not gonna be paying all this money in taxes, and so whether it's a renewal or not, they don't want to pay all these taxes and they don't trust you guys with the money. So, I mean, our parks are amazing in Isabella County. But is that something that we have to have? You know, we have transportation. Yes, we gotta have transportation. But are the people gonna vote on that? You put them all bunched together and they see all these different millages that you want them to approve. Especially since everybody wants public safety. They may look at it and say, no, we're not gonna spend all that money. So let's look at what's important. Put that on the ballot. Those ones that can't, they're gonna have to go out and get some kind of funding, grants. I've heard a couple, like the emergency response. And they do a lot of work with grants. That's amazing. That's where we should be supporting, where we should be helping. Same thing with parks. They can go out, make, you know, have events, grants. It's sad, but that's where we're at in this county. Then hopefully eventually we can build back up. But you guys got to think about what the people want and not what we've always had and appreciated, because now we're in a whole different format than what we used to be. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
My name is Linda Richardson. I'm 4 generations in Isabella County on the same road, so I'm quite attached to this county. I'm dittoing off Miss Sawyer also. But I want to add a couple of things. I don't understand why you don't seem to listen to the people. You work for us, but you seem to have it backwards when I come here and I listen to you. It's like you listen to us, you let us speak, but you do not listen. Why would you ever cut our police? When I said something to Mr. Embry, he said, we give you the minimum what we're required by the state. Do you seriously think we, the people, want minimum amount of our police officers
our emergency personnel, our fires. No, we want what we want. We want our men in blue, our officers in blue. Don't give us the minimum. And why would you put them under a general fund? They should be your priority. That should be where your budget starts. That's what we want. We don't ever want them cut. Why would you even think to cut these people? And parks are nowhere near as important to them as them. Yes, but why are the taxpayers paying 53%? Let the people pay that are using it. Let them pay 55% or something. Also, this PR firm that you're hiring, if we're broke, why are we hiring a PR firm? And how much are you paying for that? No, come at us straight on. Give us the people, do the town halls. This is ridiculous. You're spending money that we're not approving. Jerry, you've been at this for 10 years, so you're part of this problem too. Don't keep blaming somebody else. Thank you.
Good evening. I just want to comment that Director Griffiths did a phenomenal job in highlighting the value of emergency management program here in this county. My name is Jennifer Boyer. I'm the president of the Michigan Emergency Management Association, also known as MEMA. And I'm here to encourage you to reconsider the proposed funding cuts to your emergency management program. As you were presented earlier tonight, there are state statute requirements for Michigan counties to have an emergency management program. A 90% cut to your emergency management program would severely challenge the county in meeting these requirements. These requirements are here to truly serve and advocate for your communities before, during, and after emergency events. The Federal Emergency Management Agency and the state emergency management agencies have valuable roles in this field, but the most important role is your county emergency management coordinator and program. All disasters start, stay, and end local. The state and federal agencies are just simple mechanisms of support and assistance, but they go home when everything's over with. One of Michigan's Emergency Management Association's goals are the necessity of having a full-time emergency management coordinator in each county across the state. This would provide the needed capacity for communities to prepare for and respond to future disasters. Our climate is changing. Our world is changing. The changes are impacting the need for stronger emergency management programs. In the past 10 years, this area has experienced some of the largest emergencies the state has seen in the past 30 years. This includes the 2017 flash flood event, the 2020 pandemic, and also the 2020 dam failures. Just like auto insurance, it does no good to insure only the tires on a vehicle if you need other parts of the vehicle to make it go down the road safely. Funding only 10% of a necessary emergency management program is equal to insuring only the tires on a vehicle. Michigan Emergency Management Association is simply here to advocate for Isabel County to have capacity in its emergency management program to successfully fill its role for your communities and residents on good days just as much as on bad days. Thank you.
My name is John Dinsey. I'm a resident of Union Township in Isabella County. And I'm actually on the Isabella County Parks and Recreation Commission. And I don't think I could improve on what Alexis Hansen had to say about the park system. But I do want to make a kind of broad philosophical statement briefly based on what I've witnessed here tonight. About 100 years ago, a Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court said, he wrote in a decision, taxes are the price we pay for a civilized society. That was from Oliver Wendell Holmes. And I realized that the implications of Justice Holmes' statement can be interpreted differently by different people. I used to have a neighbor here in town whose children had grown up and were no longer in the school system, so she didn't vote for the school millage back in the day when we, had millage elections for schools. And recently in the Free Press, I read an article, there's a woman out of Detroit that would like to abolish the property tax. And some people raised some implications that says, well, I don't need pickleball courts, so in other words, we just ought to pay for what we use. And I've always personally voted for every single millage, and I'm over 80 now, every single millage that's ever been on a ballot. And the reason is that even though I don't directly benefit necessarily, I don't camp out at the park at Coler Lake, as some people in this county do. I might not necessarily ever need the fire department. I don't think I will. The point is that we individually have to think about being members of a community. We have to think about the larger public interests, the non-assidable interests that everybody belongs in that group. We all need clean air. We all need decent water. We all need, yes, emergency management, but we also need parks and we need public transportation, even if we don't necessarily have to use it. That we directly or indirectly benefit from all these services, including an excellently administered county government that doesn't have to struggle fighting over, whether or not we can, have a safe county building. So I'd just like to say, I'd like to end on an optimistic note. I think that a majority of people in this county are public spirited. They're going to vote for all these millages. I'm really convinced of that. I think that the past debacle was due to a anti-tax campaign that who put forward? Was it by the majority of people that did that? There were signs in my neighborhood about 38% tax increase, and there was no indication on the sign who was backing that. That's a law that when you put political signs out, there has to be a committee indicated who paid for that. And that wasn't even done. Why aren't people proud to get up and say, I'm proud that I misled the citizens of the county, that when you take 6% and you raise it to, 6% millage and you raise it 2%, that's 38% somehow. It's not just 2 mils. So I really believe that all these issues ought to go on the August ballot. I don't have any problem with that. I think it'll all pass. And I do think this new millage, which is a separate issue from renewals, should go on the November ballot. Fine, I'll vote for it. I think the majority of people will vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for general public comment?
Hello. My name is Amanda Tillotson, and I'm the Executive Director at the Humane Animal Treatment Society, also known as HATS. As you all know, our nonprofit organization is contracted to assist in fulfilling the county's obligations to provide animal sheltering services to our community in conjunction with the Isabella County Animal Control under the Isabella County Sheriff's Department. As you are considering budget cuts and our contract funding to our organization, I'd like to remind you of the service that HATS has provided to our community for the past 25 years. With an incredible amount of hard work, our organization, including our staff, volunteers, and supporters, have turned the Isabella County Animal Shelter into a place where saving lives and helping animals and people is the #1 priority. And we have moved away from the darker years where animals euthanized outweighed animals adopted. Not only do we help save animals, we serve as the shelter for animals brought in by the Animal Control Department, as well as various police departments. We house and care for the animals that have been neglected and abused, as well as the animals who pose a serious safety risk to our community. There are many different departments at risk of serious funding cuts, and I'd like to give you a brief example of how some of these agencies work together. About a year and a half ago, when a child was attacked and seriously injured by a large dog in Isabella County Park late in the evening on the 4th of July, an Isabella County deputy immediately responded. The officer contacted me after he had secured the dog to discuss housing arrangements because he already knew the shelter was full. It just so happened I was already at the shelter because Animal Control in the Isabella County Sheriff's Department had just days before seized 30 dogs from a neglect situation, and one of the dogs was actively in labor. When the deputy arrived, we worked together to move the dog safely to a secured kennel where they would no longer be at risk of hurting a community member. This is just one example of the that most people are not aware of. Furthermore, situations like this involve dispatch, various law enforcement agencies, the Animal Control Department, our organization, and the prosecuting attorney's office as well. We all work together to keep animals and people safe. Each department is equally important and works hand in hand to uphold the county's statutory obligations for animal control services and public safety. Lastly, the funding that HATS receives from Isabella County accounts for 31% of our shelter operating budget. This is a large portion of our budget and is very critical to our operations. Without our contracted funding, the services and programs that we've grown over the years that our community needs and expects would take a serious cut. As you're considering the HATS contract during your budget discussions, please remember the above and beyond services that we are able to offer to our community and how they would not be possible without the partnership that we have with the county. Please also remember how closely all of our departments work together to ensure the safety of people and animals in our community and to make sure that we're all protected. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for general public comment? Yes, sir.
Well, most of you know me. If anyone doesn't, there's no, can't sign, but I will. Oh, there it is. I'm Brett Hansen. I'm the operations manager for mobile medical response here in the county. And I don't want to repeat anything that's been brought up or said here or anything. I just want to give two quick comments from our perspective on what we're worried about with the proposed cuts to both emergency management and the sheriff's department. So with on the emergency management side, what a lot of people don't understand is, I've been the manager here for 15 years, but I've been a paramedic here for 34. And you saw some of the events that emergency management has had to coordinate and handle over the years. And what people need to realize is those have all been manageable events locally. Every day when I watch the news and I see the things happening, at the Jason Aldean concert in Las Vegas, or any number of school shootings or the nightclub shooting in Miami, where every part of your emergency services response is overwhelmed, I think to myself, it's just a matter of time. So I worry about that very much. And in addition to the 3 counties that I currently manage, I've managed 10 counties from MMR over the past 15 years. And I'm not trying to say anything negative about other emergency management groups, but if I knew there was going to be an incident tonight and I had the luxury to pick an emergency management team to handle that incident with us, I wouldn't even have to think about it. It would be Mark and his team. It's not that the other ones are that bad, they're just that good. They are far more prepared than any other emergency management group that I've ever worked with. And that says a lot for them, in my mind. On the sheriff's department side, what a lot of people don't understand, it's easy to see a sheriff deputy blocking a motor vehicle accident scene to keep the EMTs and paramedics and firefighters from getting run over and killed on a scene. That's easy for people to see. What they don't see is all the times that they respond with our crews to unsafe or potentially unsafe situations. And I try and be a pretty easy guy to work with. And rule number one that I tell everybody the day I hire an EMT or a paramedic is rule number one is you and your partner go home safe and alive at the end of your shift. So what that equates to is if we pick up that any situation is potentially unsafe or is unsafe, we stage safely away from that scene and we do not enter until law enforcement secures that scene and make sure that it's safe for our crews to go into, because we don't have any way to defend ourselves. We don't carry even pepper spray or taser, or any of those things that they have mechanisms that they can go in and contain a violent situation. So, the standing rule is don't ever go in if it's not secured by law enforcement. And people don't see the hundreds of times that they respond to those incidents with us, whether it's an assault, someone's injured, or just an unknown situation. Somebody's laying in a backyard, we think they're in cardiac arrest and we don't know why. Well, do they have bullet holes? And we need to figure that out before we send people into those situations. I would easily say that the times that they respond with us is in the hundreds, if not over 1,000 times a year. And without their presence here, there's a lot of scenes that we're going to be significantly delayed getting to injured people. Or we may, if no law enforcement secures it, we may not ever get into that scene. It's going to put everybody at huge risk, which I know all of you understand. But it's going to be critically important when we ask the taxpayers to support emergency management and the sheriff's department, that they understand that the implications are a lot deeper than just going to a criminal complaint or a situation or handling a local flood or something. They're much bigger. The potential is much bigger. So that's all I really have to say.
Thank you. Any other general public comment? Okay, seeing no one else for general public comment, announcements, commissioners, any announcements?
Yes, sir. I have one announcement and one statement. The announcement is I'd like to personally invite all the people in attendance to the Maple Syrup Festival, which is scheduled to begin next Thursday and run through Sunday, April the 25th and the 28th. If you are into pancakes, homemade sausage, and fresh maple syrup produced from the village's own maple trees, please come on over. The same meal is offered at a fair price, all you care to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. In between meals, you can enjoy the fun of family activities or simply shop the many yard sales found throughout the village and the surrounding area. It's a great way to welcome spring. The statement I like to make is this is a difficult time in Isabella County government when so many employees are dealing with the stress of possible loss of employment, and everyone is being asked to maintain current services with less available financial and labor resources. Road patrol officers, detectives, clerical staff provide an important service that safeguards the well-being and lives of county residents and protects personal property. The daily risk to life and limb, well-being of their families, and diminished respect given in certain quarters of society make policing a career that fewer and fewer individuals are willing to pursue. Our officers and support staff are special individuals, and we thank you. County Administrator Nicole Frost and her staff have provided outstanding and consistent performance in their duties. Administrator Frost has and continues to work under very stressful conditions and the never-ceasing demands of her job. No one has ever served Isabella County government and its residents in a more caring and professional manner. Nicole, I know you're still online, but you need to know that the commissioners appreciate you more than you know. Thank you. All elected officials, appointed department heads, and employees of county government deserve to be recognized for their dedication, creativity, and personal efforts to do the best job they can. Commissioners recognize this is a difficult and stressful time for all, but yet performance remains excellent, and residents are getting the attention they deserve. Isabella County government is well served by the wonderful people in its ranks. I thank you, and the commission thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Any other announcements?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Just to, I don't know a lot of details, but to go back to the renewal. In the August, it's my understanding that the tax allocation meeting is on April 22nd at 10 a.m. And the ballot language does not need to be submitted until the deadline is May 14th.
Thanks for that. Appreciate it. Any other announcements? Just a few things I want to mention. I want to thank everyone for coming. We do appreciate everyone being here and all the comments. The statement that Commissioner Vice Chairman Jelezinski made, I agree with 100%. And I will say that Commissioner Jelezinski has taken some heat lately. I will say that he is the one who a couple years ago started asking for a long range forecast, and he was given the runaround, and he kept pushing and kept pushing. And when Administrator Frost came on board, that's when we started getting good long range forecasts. So I thank him for that. Thank you. The other thing I want to mention, Isabella County Restoration House is a nonprofit homeless shelter in the county. They house a lot of people and help them get on a path to self-sustainability, help them get back on their feet. They are having a fundraiser that they call Party for a Purpose. Saturday, April 20th at Sacred Heart Parish. Tickets are $40. It's a paddle auction. It's a lot of fun. And businesses donate items to auction off. And everyone at the table, if you want to be eligible to bid on a certain item, you throw in a certain number of quarters. Depending on the value of that item, it might be 2 quarters, it might be 6 or 8 quarters for a more valuable item. And you're given a paddle with a number on it. They draw a number. If you put quarters in and they call your number, you win the item. And they do give away a lot of fabulous items. Light meal, cash bar. It's a lot of fun. April 20th. If you're interested, see me. I can get you tickets. Thanks. Any other announcements? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved and supported. All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned at 7:52. We're going to take a little break before we start the regular session.